the Speak Daughter podcast. We are in season two, um, and I'm excited. I am excited to be back. We are talking all things faith, walking with God in life, in business, in family, all of the things, and I'm super, super excited. For this next season. In my last episode, I did kind of talk a little bit about the themes of this season, and um, the big one that I'm going to introduce is the good path. So I set out every month to read through Proverbs. There are 31 chapters in Proverbs, so there's a chapter for every day. And um, I don't do anything crazy, but okay, what sticks out to me for that day, for wherever it is I am in my life in that day, and how does that chapter, connect to it. And last month, um, in chapter 2, Proverbs 2, 9 to 11, it really stuck out. So it says, "Then you will understand what is right, just, and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you." And that is the driving scripture for this season. Um, and what stuck out to me was every good path. Every good path. And I kind of went down a whole rabbit hole where I was like, how many times does Proverbs mention a good path? And I think when I counted, it was like 27 different times. And then on the flip of that, it also mentions like the evil path, or the path that's not so great, the path that you shouldn't be following, right? The path that you have a choice to walk away from. It references that a whole bunch more times. So it's like we have a choice to choose to follow the good path. And it's like, what does that mean? Right? And Proverbs, of course, is all about wisdom, but it's not what we think is wise. It's not what we think is the best for us, but it's what God has already determined and set forth to be like the best thing for us. Um, so, like I said, the kind of digging into like what the good path is and what that looks like is really the driving message behind this season, because that's going to be different for everyone. Um, and I think in life, just in my life, I can look back on from when I was a kid to like a teenager to a young adult, like out doing all kinds of crazy stuff, drugs and drinking and sex and all of this stuff, right? And we think in those moments like, oh yeah, no, maybe I'm not doing the right thing, but like this is good, because it felt good or it seems like it's the right thing to do, right? But living my life on this side of it is like I was not on the good path. I wasn't on God's path. I wasn't doing anything to serve him or to serve his people or to find out who it is that he says that I am. So that couldn't have been good. It felt good. It seemed good. My perspective said in the moment that it was good, but it's not. And I think even on this side of things, right, as I'm, you know, living my life, being a good wife, being a good mom, being a good business owner, going through my life, I can still have a perspective of this is the good path. But my definition of good, and it's, of course, we know it's in the word, right? That God's ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. And there's not a, we don't even have a small piece of the puzzle of what he intends for us to have or the path that he intends for us to follow. It's impossible for us to because we don't know, right? But in Proverbs it's very clear, right, that discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you, and the path that he lays forward will become clear in those things. but we also have to look for it, which means we have to let go of what we think is good. And really, that's kind of where I want to start, right? Because again, like his ways are not our ways, and ultimately, we don't have the bird's eye view of what the plan is. Um, so, without seeking God and without seeking his wisdom and his guidance, it's impossible to know what the good path is or how to follow it, right? And I think it's also understanding that the good path doesn't mean perfect. You know, the good path m- may not be easy. It can contain loss. It can cause you to experience rejection. Um, it may shake your trust in your faith. It may cause people to walk away from you, and it will definitely come with opposition, right? Um, and I think this whole list, these things that I just named, they are true to what my experience has been in trying to find and follow the good path that God has laid before me, right? Because it's not easy trying to juggle two businesses and a husband and 3.5 kids. I'm like 5 months pregnant. um, Trying to juggle being a mother, taking care of my family, working, and just still maintaining like my focus on God and what he has before me. That's not easy. And I think I experienced that a whole bunch in the last few months of the year, where it's like I'm trying to keep all of the balls in the air, and some days it's easier to be like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. I don't have it in me, you know. And I think in that time, in that period of feeling like, man, I'm really dropping the ball, I'm really failing here, it's understanding that it's built in, right? It's built into the good path, because we're going to have to figure out how to navigate. We're going to have to figure out how to maintain keeping God first no matter what, right? Um, it may contain loss. So it may be losing out on time or losing people, or, just loss. I think in general could mean be a lot of different, like could look differently for everyone. I can't say that in the last few months of 2025 that I experienced any catastrophic loss, but I can say that I felt lost, like within myself. Just like, man, I'm losing it. Like I don't have a good grip on where I'm at and where I'm supposed to be going, and that can be very discouraging. It could, in all with transparency, it's like, what am I even trying for? Like I set out to, on the right way, and I set out to do the right thing, but things don't, fall into place, you know. Um and I'm pretty sure later on in my life there will be other instances of loss, right? But just knowing that even on the good path, loss can happen, but it's not anything that God intends to destroy us or to break us down or to tear us down or to put us in a place where we give up or we turn back or we sit down and we just stop moving forward, right? Um, it can cause you to experience rejection. I think this is a big one. And I maybe in the last season I kind of talked a little bit more about myself, but I'm originally from El Paso, Texas, and in 2018, me and my oldest daughter, we moved out here to Denver, Colorado, and um, I have a community, um, but it's very largely made up of people who are related to my husband in some way. So, like, their family, which is not a bad thing. But I think in the effort to make friends and to find more of a community, or even just hanging on to the people from, my hometown, there definitely has been a sense of rejection based off of, not saying they're like, oh, we don't want to deal with her anymore because she's, doing this podcast, or her, where she's at in her life is different, but it could be, the that separation can feel like rejection. And I kind of come to a point where it's like, all right, do I keep going? It can, when you feel alone in something, it makes you want to stop doing that thing, and like it's not worth it, you know? Um, or maybe like reevaluate where you're at, or maybe make different decisions so that way you don't feel as alone and rejected. So I've definitely experienced that piece. Um, and it doesn't feel good, but knowing that it is good, right? I think something that I've prayed in my life is that the people who are meant to be there can't leave, and the people who aren't meant to be there can't stay. So it's trusting that on the good path, if there's rejection and it causes separation, that separation, that rejection in of itself is good, which can be very hard to like wrap your mind around, um, can shake your trust in your faith, right? I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, where it's like trusting that God knows enough about what he's doing to know, or to trust that he made the right decision when he gave you the gifts that he's given you, um, or the things that he's put on the inside of me, you know? Um, I think in my life, there's been a lot of pouring. I've been poured into, from my church back home, and people that I'm still connected to, um, from there. And it's it's like all of this has been poured in, but I also have to be able to pour out. And it's like, are you sure? Like, who am I? But trusting and having faith that God's plan, God's purpose, whatever it is that he's putting together, is ultimately like the good path. And um same thing in the last episode, I talked a little bit about the book Unstoppable by Christine Kane, and she talks about the baton and like running your race well. You have to trust that the things that God has put on the inside of you are all things that he's intended for a very specific purpose, and you have something very specific for you to do that no one else is going to be able to do, because they're not going to have the passion, they're not going to have the gift, they're not going to have the ability that he's given you. But it's trusting that and moving anyway, even when you feel uncertain, in that good path, right? um it'll cause people to walk away, and it will definitely come with opposition, right? I think anytime someone grabs a hold of the vision or the purpose or the plan, and they really start setting out on the good path, I know that the enemy gets scared, because you take that first step, and then God's going to lay the next one out in front of you, and they're going to take that step, and there's going to be another one. And it's just, as you, each step you take, you build that momentum, and the enemy doesn't want that, right? He knows that if you get enough of the pieces of the puzzle together, and you find your footing, and you stay on that path, that your place in tearing down what he is trying to build becomes clear. And when that happens, then his territory is threatened, right? What he's doing is threatened, and he doesn't want that. So he'll cause people who you love to walk away, cause people who maybe you never thought would walk away to walk away, or bring all kinds of opposition. So maybe funding falls through, or, I mean, I can't even think of, or maybe you get exhausted, and looking back, I can very easily see how in the last few months of 2025, everything that I was experiencing, like mentally and emotionally and physically, um, could have been like a weapon of opposition, right? It's fair, I think, to be exhausted in the first trimester of pregnancy. um, I'm 37. I will be 38 this year, actually next month. And um, obviously, like, I'm older than I was with my other children. And listen, how exhausted I was just about took me out. And I was so focused on just being exhausted that I wasn't focused on anything else. And although it's natural, right, it could be just opposition, right? Had I maybe taken a step back and maybe leaned on God a little bit more in that exhaustion, in that, like, ugh, I just don't have it in me, maybe I would have found the strength to have it in me and kind of keep pressing and pushing forward. As far as photography and my photo booth business go, the last few months of the year are always crazy busy. You know, companies have holiday parties, people, need photos, all of these things. Um, and then it's just busyness on top of busyness. And um, it will probably get into this in a later episode um, of the podcast, but something that I truly believe is integral for every business owner to have is the systems and processes built to help them to sustain their business. And although I have some, I'm not, I can see where I could be using them better. And I think in this coming year in my businesses, that's one thing that I um, intend to really focus on, like pushing forward, um, and just refining where I can refine so that next year, um, that busyness doesn't end up becoming a distraction from staying on the good path and continuing the work, right? Um, so yeah, all of those things are things that we can encounter on the good path, and I think what you may experience will be different, right? What you'll realize that you may experience something negative, but I challenge you in that feeling, or in that realization of, like, man, I'm really going through it, is how does that thing fit into the good path? And I think that that's important because, let's say you start out, um, I guess I can just use an example from, like, my current life, right? Later on this month, I'm going to start having just like a small coffee and connection out here in Colorado. Closer to, like, my own community. I feel like it's something that's missing, and I feel like it's something that God is, like, pulling me towards for some reason, right? Let's say I start out to do that and I can't find, like, a place, or I find a place to host it at, right? But then they back out, or, for some reason that falls through, right? I can take that step, that piece of the puzzle, and say, like, oh man, like, that didn't work out. So maybe that's not meant to be. Maybe I'm on the wrong track, right? So it what you will encounter on your good path is going to be different than what mine is. But the only thing that I can say, and the only thing I want to leave you guys with, is everything that happens in this year, if it is connected to something that God has put on the inside of you, or God has impressed upon your heart, look at it from the lens of, or even ask Him, just ask Him, like, God, how does this fit into your path? Right? What am I missing? What is the lesson? And listen for the answer, and look to find that answer in the Word, in your prayer time, day to day, at church, like, from a friend, whatever the case may be. Look to find how that thing that is happening, whatever it is that you're experiencing, falls into place with His good path. Because I think that is what fortifies our trust in Him, right? Um, and fortifies are knowing that he's there behind the scenes working no matter what, right? Um, I wrote down a note here, um, that God's wisdom comes with discretion and understanding to guide us and to fortify your faith. Um, and it reinforces that no matter what we experience on the good path, that it is good and that it is God. So God's good path will do no harm. It'll never truly leave you alone because we're never really alone. And I think in those moments where we feel alone, we can be reminded that we're not alone, right? It turns beauty from ashes. It reveals testimony, right? And I think that's another really big piece of the puzzle is that we can be on the good path and experience all of these things, but they're not things that we're meant to like just keep to, like, oh, I went through all of this. It's meant for us to share with someone else so that they're encouraged, so that they're like, you know what, I have faith in a God who can do anything. I have faith in a God who turns the impossible to possible, right? Through someone else's testimony, through your testimony, you can encourage and be pass the baton. I mean, you really got to read the book. You really got to go read Unstoppable by Christine King, because I think it's man, it's a very, very, very good book. But yes, that testimony can be a baton that someone else picks up and then they start running their race, right? Um, is meant to be shared. It gives God glory. It always will point back to Him and His love and how He cares for us, right? It contains no true loss. No true loss. So even the most catastrophic thing is not actually a loss on the good path. And I think it takes that wisdom and that knowledge and that understanding that we get from God to understand how those things fall into place, right? Um, And lastly, God's good path is always designed to make us more like Jesus, whatever that looks like, you know. So if it's conviction or correction or um, any sort of experience, right? Like it's meant to have us take a step back and look at how is this going to help me to be more like Jesus, on my path in my world to the people who I'm connected to. Um, so yeah, I will continue on, you know, with this theme as far as like being on the good path. I think ultimately when we think of the good path, we have to know, or we have to really understand that the good path is not based off of our perspective, right? In that same scripture, 9 to 11, it says that understanding will guard us. And I wrote down some notes here as far as what that means. Knowing that you can trust the good path removes the seeds of what we really think that we deserve, right? So if you're saying, like, okay, well, if God is saying that, okay, the good path is you're not going to get into law school and you're not going to be a lawyer, right? But you feel like you've worked your whole life to do it. Um, um, and it's what you deserve, right? Having the part of the scripture is discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. So if you were leaning on God, leaning on His wisdom, leaning on what's in His word and trusting His good path, you'll know that that thing that falls apart is actually part of the plan, right? And when we experience something that we feel is like unjust or unfair, or feel like, I mean, let's just be real, I feel like just God made a mistake, He got it wrong, um, knowing that you're on the good path means that everything that we go through is part of the plan. Simple as that. It is part of the plan. And the biggest thing that I want to leave you with is when you know that it's a part of the plan, you have a responsibility to accept the gift, listen for the lesson, and move forward, even when you don't understand. So, yeah, I mean, the good path. Like I said, it's gonna be a real big theme as far as season 2 this year. Because it's just stuck. It is stuck in my head and it's stuck in my heart, and it's what I'm comparing everything to. Like, is this part of the plan? Is this part of God's plan? Not my plan, but God's plan. Um, and I look at everything that happened last year and everything that I'm looking forward to in this year. I can make all the plans, right? I mean, in my brain, when we, have our new baby in May, everything is going to go the way that I plan it. But when it doesn't, just holding on to the good path, right? And again, accepting the gift of whatever it is that God gives me, listening for whatever it is He's trying to teach me or pull out of me or put into me, and continuing to move forward even when and if I don't understand. So I'm going to wrap this episode here. But thank you for tuning in. If there's something in this message that resonated with you, drop it in the comments. Reach out. Social media, I'm on all of them. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I'm happy to connect. But I love you guys, and we will see you in the next one.